The Galactic Council Hall was louder than ever before. Thousands of alien voices filled the giant chamber. Some species celebrated loudly, while others watched silently from the upper platforms. At the center of the hall stood the human delegation. Only 12 humans remained there now. No guards surrounded them, because nobody believed humans were dangerous anymore. For many alien races, this was the happiest day in modern galactic history. After years of arguments, wars, political problems, and broken treaties, the Council had finally made its decision. Humanity would be banished from the galaxy forever. No human ship would be allowed inside Council territory again. No human ambassador would speak in the Council Hall again. No human world would receive protection, trade, or communication from any member species. The humans listened quietly while the Supreme Chancellor announced the punishment. The Chancellor belonged to the powerful Varex species, tall aliens covered in silver armor-like skin. His cold voice echoed across the chamber. Humanity has proven itself too unstable for galactic civilization, he said. The Council chooses peace over chaos. Many alien leaders stood and cheered loudly. Some even laughed while looking toward the humans, but the humans did not react. That silence slowly made the celebration uncomfortable. Near the back of the chamber, an old alien admiral watched carefully. Admiral Corvin had fought beside humans many years ago during the border wars. Unlike the others, he did not smile today. He remembered human soldiers holding collapsing defense lines for days without rest. He remembered human fleets protecting alien refugees while their own ships burned in space. Most importantly, he remembered what humans became when they lost everything. Dangerous. Very dangerous. Corvan slowly turned toward another officer beside him. "This is a mistake," he whispered. The officer looked confused. "They lost." The officer replied, "No." Corvin answered quietly, "They stopped arguing." Far below them, the human ambassador stepped forward one final time. Ambassador Elias Ward looked tired but calm. His dark uniform carried no weapons and no military symbols. Only the old flag of Earth remained on his shoulder. "You may remove humanity from your council," Elias said softly. "But one day, you will remember this moment." The Chancellor laughed coldly. "Is that a threat, human?" Elias shook his head slowly. "No," he answered. "It is a warning." The chamber became silent for several seconds. Then angry voices exploded everywhere. Some alien senators demanded the humans be arrested immediately. Others shouted insults across the hall, but Elias simply turned away. The human delegation began walking toward the giant exit gates without another word. Millions across the galaxy watched the live broadcast from their homes, ships, and stations. Most believed they were watching the end of humanity's story. Outside the council hall, thousands of reporters waited near the landing platforms. Rain fell heavily across the massive city world of Nexar Prime. Human transport ships stood quietly under the dark sky, ready to leave forever. Alien cameras followed every human movement, hoping to capture anger, fear, or sadness. But the humans showed almost nothing. Families walked silently toward their ships, carrying only small bags and personal belongings. Children held their parents' hands while soldiers watched the crowds carefully. One small human girl suddenly stopped near the gate. She looked back toward the giant council building glowing high above the city. An alien reporter moved closer and asked loudly, "How does it feel knowing humanity has been rejected by the galaxy?" The little girl stared at him for a moment. Then she asked one simple question. "Who will protect you when the dark comes?" The reporter frowned in confusion. Before he could answer, her mother gently pulled her toward the transport ship. Within the next hour, the last human vessels left Nexar Prime forever. One by one, their engines disappeared into the stormy sky. Inside the council hall, celebrations continued late into the night. Music played across the city. Many leaders believed the galaxy had finally entered a peaceful age. But far beyond the outer borders of explored space, hidden human fleets moved silently through the darkness. Massive shipyards worked day and night inside secret systems unknown to the Council. Factories built weapons larger than entire cities. New soldiers trained under the flags of forgotten Earth colonies. Humanity had not disappeared. Humanity had simply left the galaxy alone for a while. 5 years later, strange signals began appearing near distant border stations. Entire patrol fleets vanished without battle. Trade routes suddenly went silent. Deep space colonies reported seeing enormous shadows moving between the stars. Then, on the same night across the galaxy, unknown warships appeared near every major border system. Their black armor reflected the light of distant suns. No ship carried Council markings. Only one symbol appeared on every vessel: Earth at Border Station. K-12, terrified officers watched hundreds of giant warships surround their sector. Then a transmission appeared across every communication screen. A calm human voice finally spoke after 5 long years of silence. This is humanity. We are no longer asking for permission. No one in the galaxy slept peacefully after the human ships appeared. For 5 years, humanity had vanished without a trace. Most alien races believed humans were struggling to survive somewhere outside known space. Some believed humanity had destroyed itself during exile. Others believed humans had become pirates hiding near forgotten systems. But nobody expected this. Nobody expected an entire fleet powerful enough to appear at every major border on the same night. Panic spread across the Galactic Council within hours. Emergency alarms echoed through the capital world of Nexar Prime. Military commanders rushed into strategy chambers while news stations repeated the same terrifying images again and again. Huge black warships floating silently near Council space. The ships looked nothing like old human designs. Old Earth ships had visible engines, communication towers, and heavy weapons attached to their hulls. These new vessels looked smooth, dark, and almost alive. No engine flames burned behind them. No radio signals came from them, and their scanners could not even measure the ships correctly. "It makes no sense," one scientist whispered while studying the data. "There should be heat signals, there should be movement, but these ships appear completely silent." Inside the Council chamber, fear slowly replaced arrogance. Only 5 years earlier, many of these same leaders had laughed while humanity left the galaxy. Now those same leaders argued loudly over what to do next. "We attack immediately," shouted a tall senator from the Dravuk Empire. "If we wait longer, humans will grow stronger." Another leader quickly disagreed. "And if they already are stronger?" she asked nervously. The room became quiet for a moment. Then all eyes turned toward Admiral Corvin. The old admiral stood silently near the center table, staring at the hologram of the human fleet. He looked older now, more tired, because deep inside, he already feared the answer. "They prepared for this," Corvin said quietly. A senator slammed his hand onto the table. "That is impossible," he snapped. "We monitored human space before exile. They barely had enough resources to survive." Corvin slowly looked toward him. "You monitored the humans inside your borders," he replied. "You never looked beyond them." At the same time, deep inside Border Station K-12, nervous officers watched the giant human fleet outside their defense line. The station commander, General Tarek, tried sending communication requests again and again. Every message received the same answer: silence. No threats, no demands, no negotiations, only silence. That silence frightened the station crew more than open war. Suddenly, one young officer gasped while staring at his radar screen. "Sir, one of the ships is moving," he whispered. The entire command room froze. Slowly, a massive human battleship moved closer toward the station. The ship was so large it blocked the stars behind it. Many officers expected weapons to fire at any second, but instead, the human vessel stopped only a few kilometers away. Then every screen inside the station suddenly turned black. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then an image appeared. A human woman wearing a dark military uniform stared directly at them. Her face looked calm, but her eyes carried something cold and dangerous. "This station is now under human observation," she said. "You will not be harmed unless you attack." General Tarek stepped closer to the screen. "What does humanity want?" he demanded. The woman answered immediately. "We want the galaxy to remember what it created." Then the transmission ended. At that same moment, terrible news reached the Council capital. An entire Council patrol fleet near the outer colonies had disappeared. 32 warships gone without battle. No distress signal, no wreckage, nothing. Another fleet sent to investigate also vanished only hours later. Fear spread faster than any enemy army ever could. Rumors began appearing across the galaxy. Some claimed humans had discovered ancient forbidden technology. Others believed humanity had made alliances with unknown species outside explored space. A few even whispered that humans were no longer fully human anymore. Meanwhile, hidden far beyond the galaxy, enormous human shipyards continued building new warships every hour. Thousands of workers moved through giant factories inside hollow moons and secret asteroid bases. Human commanders studied maps of the galaxy while preparing for the next stage of their return. At the center of one massive command station stood Ambassador Elias Ward, the same man who had walked silently out of the council hall 5 years earlier, but he no longer looked like a diplomat. Now he wore the black uniform of the Human Defense Fleet. A younger officer stood beside him. "The council is panicking already," she reported. Elias looked calmly at the galaxy map glowing before him. "They should be," he answered softly. The officer hesitated before asking another question. "Do you think they understand what is happening now?" Elias remained silent for a few seconds. Then he slowly shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "They still think this is about revenge." Far away, inside the council chamber, another emergency report suddenly appeared on the central screen. A deep space scout ship had finally returned after investigating one of the missing fleets. The damaged vessel drifted badly through space. Covered in burn marks and barely functioning, rescue teams quickly opened the ship and carried out the surviving pilot. The terrified survivor could barely speak, but before losing consciousness he whispered one final sentence. "They were waiting for us the entire time." Long before humanity was banished, thousands of human colony ships disappeared into deep space. Most alien races believed those ships were lost forever. The galaxy was dangerous in those days. Pirates hunted weak travelers, strange storms destroyed navigation systems, and entire star systems vanished without warning. When the human colony fleets stopped answering signals, the Galactic Council closed the investigation only months later. To the Council, those missing humans were unimportant, just another small tragedy inside a massive galaxy. But humanity never forgot them. And now, after 5 years of silence, the truth finally returned. Inside the Council capital, fear continued growing with every passing hour. Human warships still surrounded the major border systems, but they had not launched a full attack yet. That confused everyone. If humanity wanted war, why wait? If humanity wanted peace, why arrive with fleets large enough to destroy planets? Nobody understood the real plan. Admiral Corvin stood inside the military archive chamber beneath the council hall, searching through ancient classified records. Dust covered many of the old data files because nobody had opened them in decades. A young officer followed him nervously. "What are we looking for?" she asked. Corvin stopped near a damaged holographic file. "The truth," he answered quietly. He activated the file and an old star map appeared in the air. Thousands of small lights blinked far beyond explored space. The officer looked confused immediately. "These systems aren't on modern maps," she said. "They were removed," Corvin replied, "because the council believed nobody survived there." The officer slowly realized what he meant. "The missing human colonies," she whispered. Corvin nodded silently. Years ago, humanity had launched massive colony missions beyond known space, hoping to build new homes far from crowded Council territory. Many of those fleets vanished during the journey. The Council assumed they were destroyed, but they were wrong. Very wrong. Far beyond the outer galaxy, hidden human civilizations had survived in complete isolation for generations, without Council control, without alien politics, without limits, and during humanity's exile, those forgotten colonies finally reunited with Earth. Now the humans who returned were no longer divided worlds struggling for survival. They had become something far stronger. Inside one hidden human system, enormous fleets moved around a giant artificial planet covered in lights and factories. Thousands of battleships waited near orbital shipyards larger than entire cities. Human soldiers trained across massive military stations while commanders prepared invasion routes across the galaxy. At the center of the system stood a huge station called Bastion Prime. It served as the main command center for humanity's return. Inside the station, Ambassador Elias Ward walked through a dark strategy room filled with holographic star maps. Military officers stood around him silently. One commander pointed toward several blinking systems on the map. Council supply routes continue collapsing, he reported. 3 outer fleets lost contact this morning. Another officer spoke next. Several alien colonies are requesting negotiations already. Elias listened carefully without emotion. For 5 years, humanity had prepared for this moment, not only with weapons, but with patience. The Council believed exile would weaken humanity. Instead, exile had united them. A young officer suddenly entered the room quickly. "Sir," she said nervously, "we intercepted Council communications." She activated the recording. Immediately, angry, alien voices filled the room. "The humans are attacking our trade routes," one leader shouted. "Our colonies are running out of supplies." Another warned. "We need a counterattack now," someone demanded. The recording ended. Several human officers smiled slightly, but Elias remained serious. "They still do not understand," he said quietly. One commander frowned. "Understand what?" he asked. Elias looked toward the galaxy map glowing before them. "This war was never about destroying them," he answered. "It is about controlling fear." Meanwhile, across Council space, entire alien sectors slowly began falling into chaos. Trade ships vanished between systems, communication relays suddenly stopped working, military fleets arrived at supply stations only to discover empty storage docks. Yet, strangely, humans rarely attacked civilian worlds directly. That confused many alien citizens even more. The Council had always described humans as violent monsters, but now human fleets targeted military systems, shipyards, weapon factories, and supply routes instead of cities. Some alien worlds even started questioning the Council itself. If humans truly wanted destruction, why spare civilian populations? Why warn stations before taking control? Why allow surrender? Those dangerous questions spread quickly across the galaxy. Inside the Council chamber, panic slowly turned into desperation. Several species demanded emergency evacuations while others blamed each other for the growing disaster. Then another terrifying report arrived. A hidden surveillance station near the core worlds had discovered secret human bases already operating inside Council territory. Entire star systems had been infiltrated years earlier without detection. The chamber exploded into chaos immediately. "That is impossible," one senator shouted. "How could humans hide fleets inside our borders?" Nobody answered him, because deep down, everyone already knew the truth. The Council had spent so many years looking down on humanity that they stopped paying attention completely. Suddenly, every screen inside the chamber flashed red. An emergency military transmission appeared from the outer sectors. A frightened commander spoke rapidly through heavy static. "Unknown human fleets are moving toward the inner systems," he warned. "There are too many ships." Behind him, explosions lit the darkness of space. Then the transmission suddenly cut off. Silence filled the chamber once again. Admiral Corvin slowly closed his eyes for a moment, because the thing he feared most was finally happening. Humanity was no longer returning from exile. Humanity was taking the galaxy back. The galaxy had seen wars before. Huge wars, entire planets burned in ancient conflicts, and massive fleets once fought for years near the core systems. But this war felt different. There were no giant invasion announcements, no speeches about conquest, no endless battles filling the stars with fire. Instead, the galaxy slowly began falling apart from the inside, and nobody understood how humanity was doing it. On the industrial world of Tarvex 9, millions of workers suddenly lost communication with nearby systems. Cargo ships stopped arriving, navigation satellites shut down without warning, factories powered off one after another. At first, the government believed it was a technical problem. Then military stations around the planet also went dark. Within hours, panic spread across the entire world. Nobody knew what was happening. Far away on another colony, defense fleets prepared for human attacks that never came. Instead, their fuel supplies disappeared from storage systems overnight. Weapon controls malfunctioned during combat drills. Even emergency backup systems failed one by one. Some officers blamed sabotage. Others blamed spies. But the truth was far worse. Humanity had spent 5 years studying the entire structure of the Galactic Council, its trade systems, military networks, supply routes, communication towers, and defense programs. Now humans were attacking all of them at the same time. Inside the Council capital, emergency alarms never stopped anymore. Every hour brought new disasters. One senator rushed into the chamber shouting, "The outer communication grid is collapsing." Another screamed about missing supply fleets. A third warned that several member species were refusing Council orders completely. Fear spread faster than the human fleets themselves. At the center of the chamber, Supreme Chancellor Valor tried to control the chaos. "We still have the largest military in the galaxy," he declared angrily. "We will crush humanity with force." But even as he spoke, another officer entered with terrible news. "Sir, Fleet Sigma has disappeared." The room froze instantly. Fleet Sigma was one of the Council's strongest defense forces. Over 300 warships. Gone. No battle reports, no survivors, only silence. Admiral Corvin stood quietly near the edge of the chamber, listening carefully. Unlike the others, he finally understood humanity's strategy. Humans were not trying to win one giant battle. They were breaking the galaxy itself, one system at a time. Meanwhile, deep inside hidden human command centers, thousands of analysts watched the chaos unfold across holographic screens. Human officers monitored trade collapses, communication failures, and military confusion in real time. Every movement had been planned years earlier. At Bastion Prime, Ambassador Elias Ward entered the Central War Room while commanders studied the latest reports. A young officer looked up from her station. "Council systems are failing faster than expected," she reported. "Several species are already withdrawing support from the Senate." Another officer smiled slightly. "Their alliance is collapsing," he added. But Elias did not celebrate. He simply stared at the galaxy map silently. One commander finally asked the question many were thinking. "Why are we holding back?" "We could destroy the core worlds right now." Elias slowly turned toward him. "Fear is more powerful than destruction," he answered calmly. "If we destroy their worlds, we create martyrs. If we break their control, the galaxy will destroy the Council for us." The room became quiet, because deep down, everyone knew he was right. Across the galaxy, ordinary alien citizens slowly began questioning everything they had been told about humans. Council propaganda had described humanity as savage and uncontrollable for decades. But now, human fleets avoided civilian targets. Human soldiers allowed surrender. Human commanders even restored power to some abandoned colonies after council systems failed. Those stories spread quickly across communication networks, and with every story, trust in the council weakened further. Then something happened that shocked the entire galaxy. Several alien worlds openly declared neutrality and refused to fight humanity anymore. One small colony even raised the old Earth flag beside its planetary government building. The council reacted with fury. Traitor accusations spread across every official broadcast. Military arrests began on loyal worlds. But those actions only made the panic worse. People were no longer afraid of humans alone. Now they feared their own leaders too. Late that night, every screen across the galaxy suddenly turned black. Homes, military stations, factories, ships, schools, and even the council chamber itself lost connection at the exact same moment. For several seconds, darkness covered the entire communication network. Then a symbol slowly appeared. The old emblem of Earth. A calm, human voice echoed across billions of screens. This message is for every citizen of the galaxy. Years ago, humanity asked for peace. The Council answered with exile. Years ago, humanity asked for cooperation. The Council answered with fear. Now, the galaxy suffers because of the leaders who created this war. The voice paused briefly, then spoke one final sentence. We gave you peace once. You chose exile. The transmission ended instantly. Across countless worlds, silence followed. Not because people were confused anymore, but because many had started realizing something terrifying. Humanity was not fighting like a desperate species seeking revenge. Humanity was fighting like a civilization that already knew it would win. For generations, the Galactic Council told the same story about humanity. Humans were dangerous, emotional, violent, and impossible to control. Every school inside Council territory taught those words to young students. Every news network repeated them during times of conflict. And after humanity's exile, most citizens accepted the story without question. But now, as human fleets spread across the galaxy, hidden truths slowly began coming into the light. Truths the Council had buried long ago. Inside the lower archives beneath the Council Hall, Admiral Corvin stood alone in front of an ancient sealed vault. Very few people even knew the vault existed anymore. Dust covered the heavy metal doors, and old warning symbols flashed weakly above the entrance. A nervous security officer looked toward Corvin carefully. "Admiral, these files are restricted by direct council order," he warned softly. Corvin stared at the vault silently for a moment. "Open it," he said. The officer hesitated, but finally obeyed. Slowly, the giant doors unlocked with a deep metallic sound. Rows of forgotten data records filled the dark chamber inside. Most of them had not been accessed for decades. Corvin walked toward the center terminal and activated the oldest file. Immediately, holographic images appeared in the air. Burning planets, destroyed fleets, and terrified civilians running through smoke-filled cities. The officer looked shocked. "What war was this?" he whispered. Corvin answered quietly, "The first Ravager invasion." The officer's eyes widened immediately. Every citizen in the galaxy knew the Ravagers. They were one of the deadliest enemies in galactic history. Savage machine-like creatures that destroyed entire civilizations during the ancient wars. But one important detail had been erased from history. Humanity had been the species that stopped them. The holographic recording continued playing. Thousands of human ships charged directly into Ravager fleets while alien worlds evacuated civilians. Human soldiers fought on collapsing planets while Council fleets retreated to safer sectors. Entire human colonies sacrificed themselves to protect species that barely trusted them. The officer stared at the images in disbelief. "The Council never taught us this," he whispered. "No," Corvin replied bitterly. "They removed it." More recordings appeared across the chamber. Human engineers rebuilding destroyed alien cities. Human medical teams helping wounded refugees. human fleets defending Council space during impossible battles. For a long time, humanity had not been the galaxy's enemy. Humanity had been its shield. Then the final classified recording appeared, a secret council meeting from many years ago. Several alien leaders sat around a dark table speaking in worried voices. One senator pointed toward a star map filled with expanding human colonies. If humanity continues growing, he warned, they will eventually become stronger than the council itself. Another leader spoke next. They are already becoming heroes across the galaxy. We cannot control species that trust humans more than us. The officer looked horrified while listening. They feared humanity, he said quietly. Corvin nodded slowly. They feared what humans could become. At that same moment, across the galaxy, unrest continued spreading between council worlds. Citizens protested in major cities, demanding answers from their governments. Some military officers refused orders to attack human forces. Others secretly leaked classified information onto public networks. Every new secret weakened the council further. Meanwhile, aboard the massive human command station Bastion Prime, Elias Ward studied reports from across the galaxy. A young officer approached him carefully. Riots have started on 3 core worlds, she reported. Several species are openly blaming the Council for the war now. Elias remained silent for several seconds. Then he looked toward the stars outside the station windows. They are finally seeing the truth, he said softly. The officer hesitated before speaking again. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Coming back like this? Elias did not answer immediately. Instead, he slowly walked toward a holographic memorial near the center of the room. Thousands of names covered the glowing wall: lost colonies, dead soldiers, forgotten worlds, humans who disappeared during the years of exile. They turned fear into hatred, Elias said quietly, and hatred into policy. They created this future themselves. Far away, inside the council chamber, panic was reaching its breaking point. Several member species officially announced their withdrawal from the alliance. Military sectors stopped answering Senate commands. Supply shortages caused chaos across major systems, and worst of all, ordinary citizens no longer trusted their leaders. Supreme Chancellor Valor slammed his fist onto the command table furiously. "We cannot allow humanity to control the narrative," he shouted. But even as he spoke, another emergency transmission interrupted the chamber. A military officer appeared on the screen, covered in smoke and blood. "Sir, multiple defense fleets are surrendering," he reported desperately. "They refuse to continue fighting." The transmission cut suddenly as explosions echoed behind him. Silence filled the chamber once again. Then Admiral Corvin slowly stepped forward. For the first time in years, every leader listened carefully to his words. His tired eyes moved across the frightened senators surrounding him. "We spent decades telling the galaxy humanity was the monster," he said quietly, "but we never admitted the truth." The chamber remained completely silent. Corvin took one slow breath before speaking again. "We were never protecting the galaxy from humans. We were protecting ourselves from what humans could become. The galactic core had never known fear like this before. For centuries, the core worlds stood untouchable at the center of civilization, protected by massive defense fleets, powerful governments, and the authority of the Galactic Council. But now, human warships surrounded every major route leading into the core systems. Thousands of black vessels floated silently near strategic borders, watching, waiting. No one could enter. No one could leave. Across the galaxy, citizens stared at live broadcasts showing endless human fleets blocking the stars themselves. Many believed the final destruction of the Council had already begun. Panic spread through the core worlds. Rich families rushed toward emergency shelters. Government officials secretly tried escaping through hidden routes. Military commanders prepared for a battle they no longer believed they could win. And inside the council chamber, Fear slowly turned into desperation. Supreme Chancellor Valor looked exhausted now. The proud leader who once celebrated humanity's exile no longer appeared powerful. Dark circles covered his eyes, and his voice carried visible fear whenever he spoke. "We still have one advantage left," he told the remaining senators. "The humans need the galaxy intact." One senator laughed nervously. "And if they do not?" she asked quietly. Nobody answered her. At that same moment, every communication system inside the core worlds suddenly activated. Emergency alarms stopped instantly. Military broadcasts vanished from screens. Then the symbol of Earth appeared once again across the galaxy. This time, Elias Ward himself stood before the cameras. He wore the dark uniform of the Human Defense Fleet, but his expression remained calm. Behind him, massive human warships filled the stars like shadows. For several seconds, he simply looked directly into the camera without speaking. The silence alone made billions nervous. Then Elias finally spoke. "Citizens of the galaxy." For years, the Council ruled through fear. They divided species, erased truths, and punished anyone they could not control. They exiled humanity, believing isolation would destroy us. Instead, exile united us. Across countless worlds, citizens watched silently. Even Council soldiers stopped working to hear the message. Elias continued calmly, "Humanity does not seek the destruction of innocent worlds. We did not return to burn the galaxy. We returned because the system controlling it became corrupt long ago." He paused briefly, then his voice became colder. "This is humanity's final warning. All military forces loyal to the Council must stand down immediately. Any world choosing peace will remain untouched. But if the Council continues this war..." The stars behind him suddenly revealed hundreds of massive hidden warships moving slowly into formation. Ships larger than anything ever built by the Council. Even veteran military officers watching the broadcast felt fear in that moment. Elias finished the sentence quietly. "Then, the responsibility for what happens next belongs to them." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, silence followed once again. But this time, the silence felt different. Many worlds no longer feared humanity most. Now they feared what the Council might do next. Inside the Senate chamber, arguments exploded immediately after the broadcast ended. Several leaders demanded surrender. Others begged for negotiations. But Chancellor Valor refused completely. "We cannot surrender to humans," he shouted angrily. "If humanity takes control, the Council dies." Admiral Corvin stepped forward slowly. "The Council is already dying," he answered coldly. Valor ignored him and turned toward a group of military officers near the back of the chamber. "Prepare the Eclipse Protocol," he ordered quietly. The room instantly became silent. Several senators stared at him in horror. One finally whispered, "You cannot be serious." But Valor's expression never changed. "The humans forced this," he replied. Far below the Senate building, hidden deep beneath the core worlds, massive sealed doors slowly opened for the first time in decades. Inside the darkness rested the Council's final weapon, a classified superweapon capable of destroying entire star systems, the Eclipse Array, built secretly after the Ravager Wars, forbidden by countless galactic treaties, and powerful enough to erase entire fleets in seconds. Meanwhile, aboard Bastion Prime, human intelligence officers suddenly detected unusual energy activity beneath the core systems. Emergency warnings flashed across every command screen. A nervous analyst looked toward Elias immediately. "Sir, we found something," she said. Large holographic images appeared above the strategy table. Deep underground facilities activating across multiple core worlds, massive energy signatures building rapidly. One officer's face turned pale while studying the readings. "That energy level," he whispered. "It's a planet killer." The room became tense immediately. Several commanders began demanding immediate attacks on the core systems before the weapon activated fully. But Elias remained calm. "Can we stop it?" he asked quietly. The analysts exchanged worried looks. "Maybe," one answered nervously, but not without entering the core directly. Elias stared silently at the glowing map before him. For years, humanity had prepared for every possible council response, but deep down, he hoped the galaxy would choose peace before this moment arrived. Now that hope was disappearing quickly. Suddenly, another transmission reached Bastion Prime from inside the core worlds. A frightened council scientist appeared on the screen. Blood covered one side of his face while alarms screamed behind him. "They're activating the Eclipse Array," he warned desperately. "You don't understand. Valor would rather destroy the galaxy than lose control of it." Explosions echoed somewhere behind the scientist. Then the signal cut violently. Inside the command room, silence filled the air for several seconds. Finally, Elias looked toward his officers with cold determination in his eyes. "Prepare the Dominion fleet," he ordered quietly. Several commanders froze immediately, because every human officer knew what that meant. Humanity's most powerful warships were finally entering the war. The final battle for the galaxy lasted only 17 minutes, but people would remember those 17 minutes for thousands of years. Across every major system, citizens watched the war unfold live through emergency broadcasts. The stars above the core worlds burned with light as the largest fleets in galactic history moved toward each other. On one side stood the remaining forces of the Galactic Council, thousands of desperate warships protecting the Eclipse Array. On the other side stood humanity, silent black fleets stretching across space like an endless wall. At the center of the human formation, the Dominion fleet finally appeared. Even experienced military commanders stared at the giant vessels in shock. The ships were massive beyond imagination. Some were larger than cities. Others carried entire battle groups inside their armored hulls. For years, the galaxy believed humanity was rebuilding slowly in exile. Nobody realized humans had spent those years preparing for this exact moment. Inside the Council Command Station, Supreme Chancellor Valor watched the approaching human fleets with shaking hands. Fear filled the room around him. Several officers begged him to surrender before it was too late, but Valor refused. "If the Council falls," he said coldly, "then humanity falls with it." Far beneath the station, the Eclipse Array continued charging. Massive streams of energy moved across giant underground machines hidden below the core worlds. Once activated fully, the weapon could erase entire systems in seconds. Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship Resolute, Elias Ward stood calmly inside the command chamber. Thousands of holographic battle reports surrounded him. Human officers moved quickly between control stations while fleet commanders prepared for the attack. One young officer looked toward Elias nervously. "Sir, the Eclipse Array will be ready in less than 20 minutes, she warned. Elias nodded slowly. "Then we end this before that happens," he answered. Outside the flagship, human fleets began moving forward together. The stars themselves seemed to disappear behind the enormous wall of warships. Then the battle began. Council defense platforms fired first. Bright waves of energy crossed the darkness toward the human fleet. But the Dominion ships continued moving without slowing down. Massive energy shields absorbed the attacks while smaller human vessels rushed through the gaps in enemy lines. Explosions filled space across the core systems. Entire defense fleets collapsed within minutes. Human warships moved with terrifying precision. Every attack targeted weapons, command systems, and military stations, not cities, not civilians. The galaxy watched in shock as humanity fought with total control. Inside the council chamber, panic finally broke completely. Warning alarms screamed across every screen while fleet reports disappeared one after another. "We're losing the outer defense line," one officer shouted. "Human forces breached Sector 4, another screamed. "They're inside the core perimeter." Valor stared silently at the chaos around him. For the first time, he understood the truth completely. Humanity had never returned to survive. Humanity returned to replace the old galaxy itself. Suddenly, a massive explosion shook the Council Station violently. Human strike teams had entered the lower sectors. Military officers rushed through smoke-filled hallways while emergency doors slammed shut everywhere. At the same time, deep underground, the Eclipse Array reached final activation. A giant sphere of unstable energy formed above the machine core. Scientists desperately tried stabilizing the weapon while alarms flashed red across the facility. Then something unexpected happened. Several Council engineers suddenly shut down their own control systems. Security officers shouted in confusion as workers sabotaged the weapon from inside. One terrified scientist screamed, "We're not dying for this government anymore." The rebellion spread quickly through the facility. Power systems failed one after another. Energy levels inside the Eclipse Array became unstable immediately. Aboard the Resolute, human analysts detected the collapse instantly. "The weapon is failing," an officer reported. Elias looked toward the core world silently for several seconds. Then he gave one final order. "Disable the array," he said calmly. Moments later, Dominion-class warships fired together for the first time. Massive beams of light crossed space and struck the underground weapon facilities directly. The Eclipse Array exploded before full activation. A shockwave rolled across the core systems, but the planet itself survived. The war ended almost immediately after that. Remaining Council fleets surrendered across the galaxy within hours. Supreme Chancellor Valor was arrested while trying to escape through a hidden transport route, and for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council officially collapsed. Days later, silence returned to the stars. Human fleets remained near the core worlds, but they did not occupy civilian cities. Instead, humanity began rebuilding damaged systems, restoring trade routes, and reopening communication networks. Many alien worlds expected revenge after everything humanity had suffered, but revenge alone never came. Months later, representatives from hundreds of species gathered once again inside the old council hall. Only now, the banners of the ancient council were gone. In their place stood a single new symbol beside the flags of many worlds. Earth, Elias Ward stood before the assembly quietly. "The old galaxy ruled through fear," he said calmly. "That age is over." No cheering filled the chamber, only silence, because everyone understood how much had changed. Years later, alien children would study the human return inside schools across the galaxy, not as the story of humanity's revenge, but as the moment the old galaxy ended forever and a new one finally began. At the entrance of every major border station, one message eventually appeared beside the New Alliance symbol, a warning written in every known language. Do not mistake human silence for weakness.